Tonight, what's the water quality like in our rivers and seas?
There is so much water pollution going into Windermere at the minute.
Raw sewage being dumped illegally.
It costs money to run the treatment works. It doesn't cost money to dump it in the river.
The damage it's causing.
That very composition that makes it so good on your dishes is very bad for the fishes.
And who's to blame?
We're talking tens of billions of pounds if we wanted to upgrade all our sewage treatment plants in the UK.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. Last year, water companies dumped raw sewage into England's rivers and seas 400,000 times, and those are just the ones we know about. Only 14% of England's rivers are rated as being in good condition, a figure that hasn't changed since 2009. So what's lurking in our water, and what can we do to help? Joe Crowley investigates.
Being able to get out and enjoy the tranquility of our countryside has been a lifesaver for many of us during the pandemic. And for increasing numbers, that's also meant taking a dip in a river or the sea. Places like Meadow in Oxford. It's a beautiful spot and a favourite for many people who want a bit of wild swimming. But just upstream, it's a very different picture. Like other rivers up and down the country, raw, untreated sewage is being pumped into the water. It's playing havoc with wildlife, the health of the rivers, and potentially for anyone getting in here.
And it isn't always as obvious as you might think. Of course, the smell can be a definite giveaway, but much of it is invisible. You simply can't see the bacteria that will make you or I very sick, nor the nutrients and the toxic chemicals that end up killing the plants and the wildlife below the surface.
Raw sewage was released from over 100 different sewage treatment works for almost 50,000 hours into the Upper Thames alone last year. A shocking statistic that helped trigger a campaign to limit water pollution.
Oxford is a city built on the river that is, it's famous for its rowing clubs and punting. So I just felt, along with lots of other people, that this isn't how it should be.
More than 5,000 residents signed a petition calling for designated bathing water status in Meadow, which would mean regular testing for bacteria, alerts after sewage spills, and improvements to the wastewater system.
We had a protest here, actually. About 100 people turned up, swimming and paddleboarding, and Thames Water put some money towards some citizen science water quality testing for bacteria.
The tests were looking for 2 different types of bacteria that are harmful to humans, including E. coli. Some strains of that bacteria can cause serious infections and even organ failure.
We were tested in Oxford. From January this year to August, the harmful bacteria were on average double the safe level that they should be, and sometimes up to 8 times the safe level.
Goodness. Or do you know people that have got ill from swimming in places like this?
Through the campaign, I've learnt of people who've had to go to hospital.
Really?
Have had to go to A&E and fluid loss, and that's actually hospitalised them.
A decision about the bathing water status here will be made early next year. If it's approved, then the water company and the council will have 5 years to make bacteria levels safe to swim in. Thames Water say they are listening to customers who've told them to do more to protect these environments. But it's not just an issue in Oxfordshire, of course. In England, only 14% of rivers are in good ecological health, and every single one of them fails to meet chemical standards. If you're wondering what good should look like, it's this: clear water, clean gravel, and healthy plants. And this is the same brook, just a few miles downstream of a sewage spill point. Agriculture and sewage are the 2 big culprits in England and Wales. And sewage, treated or untreated, is listed as a cause for over half of our failing rivers.
What's been happening is that the sewage has been diverted raw to the rivers when there isn't rainfall, simply because there's not the capacity in the sewage works because it hasn't expanded to meet the size of the new town that's been built, and also because it costs money to run the treatment works. It doesn't cost money to dump it in the river.
When we pay our water bills, a significant amount of the money goes towards the treatment of wastewater. It's an expensive process. Most sewers also collect rainwater, and they can be overwhelmed when there's a heavy downpour. When this happens, water companies are allowed to use combined sewer overflows, or CSOs, to let raw sewage into rivers and the sea. That's only supposed to happen in exceptional circumstances, and they need a permit to do it. If they don't stick to the conditions of their permit, it's a criminal offence. But data uncovered this year showed that many water companies have been illegally dumping raw sewage into our rivers when they should be treating it. It's not always illegal, and there may be special dispensations if companies say they can't get the chemicals they need to treat wastewater because of COVID or Brexit. But it's happening regularly all over England and Wales. Campaigners have been documenting the problems, like here in Wetherby.
You've literally got it all the way going downstream.
In the Lake District, a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
And there's just been the biggest blue-green algal bloom. There is so much water pollution going into Windermere at the minute.
And protests on the shores of Brighton.
Clean seas for all! Clean seas for all! Clean seas for all!
An ITV News investigation found raw sewage was dumped in the River Wye 40,000 times last year.
We're finding small dead fish, washed up along the side of the river. There's nothing like it.
Welsh Water said they weren't hiding from the problem, but that they had to engage with customers over how much improving the situation would cost and how long it would take. So our rivers are in a sorry state. Is there anything we can do to help? It costs around £100 million a year to sort out blocked sewers. Overflows are often used to help release them, meaning more untreated sewage in our waters. Last year, 40% of those pollution incidents were caused by blockages from things we flush down our toilets and drains.
People don't make the connection between their toilet, which quite often is used as a bin, actually the fact that that's connected to our rivers and seas.
Conventional wipes, which are 90% plastic, are one of the big culprits. But there are fine-to-flush wet wipes, which can make a huge difference.
So we're going to simulate what happens in the sewage system if these wipes are flushed. So we're going to give them a good shake.
OK.
Shall I grab one?
Yeah. So I've got the plastic one.
Go for it, OK?
Right here.
All right, ready? We'll see what happens now.
Ooh!
So you'll see yours is still a wet wipe. It's still in one piece.
Yeah, I'm going to prove it by bringing it out. Let's see this. So this is very much still a wet wipe,
very
just
much
a bit
wet
wetter.
wipe. And mine is just basically like tissue paper. It's all broken up now. It's kind of just dissolved. The problem is we're flushing all these plastic products down there, along with fats, oils and greases from our drains, and it's causing these giant fatbergs. The more blocked our sewers are, the more frequent we're going to see those sewage spills. The message is really clear. Try and avoid flushing anything down the toilet other than pee, paper and poo.
But what about the other things lurking in our waters that are more difficult to see? Researchers at the University of Portsmouth have been examining the chemicals found in our wastewater.
We all use washing machines and dishwashers, washing up liquids. We use detergents to clean down our work surfaces. At a sewage treatment plant, some of them get broke down, but others don't. They don't have to be there in a very high concentration to have quite dramatic effects on wildlife.
And as some of these chemicals can act like hormones, that effect can even include sex changes in some organisms.
It will have a population-level effect. If, say, a male fish is having ovarian tissue growing in its testes, it will produce less sperm. Its likelihood of fertilizing other females will be impacted.
Research carried out by Alex's team is mostly based at Langstone Harbour near Portsmouth, a special area of conservation. Within the wastewater, they're finding what's described as forever chemicals.
They're in our non-stain clothing, waterproof clothing, non-stick frying pans. We designed them so they don't break down. The problem is when they get into the environment, they don't break down there either. There are already populations of killer whales out there which they think are going to be in decline and go extinct because of the chemicals we banned 30 years ago. We know they're harmful, we know they're building up in the organisms, we just don't know what the long-term impact will be.
It's thought the current treatment of our wastewater isn't able to get rid of these chemicals completely. But Alex believes that upgrading infrastructure would see a vast improvement.
We're talking tens of billions of pounds if we wanted to upgrade all our sewage treatment plants in the UK. So then there's a question of where is that money best spent? Is it best spent on hospitals, doctors and nurses, or is it best spent on upgrading our sewage infrastructure?
So it seems our everyday household cleaning products could be harmful to our rivers and seas. I'm keen to find out more about what we can do at home to help. Michelle O'Gundahan is a TV presenter and author who also champions cleaning without chemicals.
We're conditioned to believe that we need all these products, that you need something to wash your clothes, that you need something to soften your clothes, that you need one product for your loo and one for your kitchen sink. It's just marketing, and that isn't good for either us or the planet.
So what should we be using instead?
I would say washing soda would be my #1 product. Liquid soap, you can use that for everything. And then I make my own surface cleaner, which is 1 part white vinegar to 9 parts water, a little dash of soap and a little bit of lavender oil. These are affordable, they're convenient, and they do the job just as well, if not better.
150 million bottles of fairy liquid are sold every year. But what does it say on the label?
I've never read the back of my washing up liquid. I'm afraid it does say that it's harmful to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. I can't believe that.
Joe, you're not going to be alone. My argument is that 150 million bottles a year sounds like quite a lot to me, draining straight into the water systems. So that very composition that makes it so good on your dishes is very bad for the fishes.
A Fairy Liquid spokesperson told us that all products for sale in the UK are safe both for those who use them and the environment. The things we put down our drains can obviously affect living things in our waterways. But what other impact is raw sewage having? Southern Water hit the headlines this summer after being fined £90 million for deliberately dumping almost 1 billion litres of it into the sea. It all started when a local oyster company realised something was wrong.
The shellfish waters here are regularly tested. There was an anomaly in one of those testings that came back with a really high reading of E. coli. But it was down to a large sewage spill from the Swellcliffe plant, which is about a mile down the coast.
This was the beginning of a 6-year Environment Agency investigation into Southern Water. James believes frequent sewage spills are still affecting his business.
We are one of the most developed countries in the world. Why is a company allowed to keep pumping raw sewage into the water? It's just intrinsically wrong. The oyster company's been growing oysters in some form or another since 1793. If the water quality isn't of sufficient quality to grow shellfish in, then ultimately that business is not viable.
The company has increased testing and believes their oysters are safer than ever. But just this summer they had to close because of more sewage spills and concerns over norovirus.
We've effectively been shut for July and August. Estimated cost probably £250,000 in turnover, which is an awful lot of money for a small business on the back of COVID and on the back of Brexit.
Documents from the court case in July showed Southern Water had covered up its actions by very significant underreporting of the number of illegal pollution spills it had made between 2010 and 2015. Last year, they made a profit of almost £330 million.
There's been a welcome trend in recent years towards bigger and bigger fines, and it is right that they should lose some of those profits for the crime that they have committed. But we would welcome larger fines. We would welcome more direct links to individuals.
Southern Water told us they're changing for the better. External shareholders received no dividends this year, and they said, by 2025, we will reduce pollution by 80%, and we're developing proposals to reduce storm releases by 80% by 2030. Working with our regulators and partners, we are ready to design and deliver the necessary innovative solutions. So, what might be going wrong? Critics point to the fact that privatised water companies have been allowed to self-monitor since 2010. As well as carrying out their own pollution testing, they're expected to honestly report how often they've dumped untreated sewage. For the most part, the Environment Agency takes their word for it. The agency's enforcement budget has been slashed by almost 2/3 since 2010, which means even routine monitoring is very limited. Is this a recipe for disaster?
Frankly, it's only human nature. If you're a sewage works manager in a small town and your boss in central office is giving you a hard time because the works has been having a bit of a problem, and you get the chance to tweak to make it look a bit better, what are you going to do? Of course you're going to do that.
A former senior figure at one of the major water companies spoke to me about how easy it is to allegedly cheat and cut corners. We weren't able to verify the claims, and we've changed their voice to protect their identity. But their story is compelling.
You're not supposed to know when the tests were going to take place, but we did. If there was an issue at one of the sewage works and it wasn't passing its sampling, people on site would sometimes give the samplers, who were often old colleagues or friends, a call to ask when they would next be paying a visit. Not all sewage works would have issues, but this did happen when it was needed. Most of the time we wouldn't treat the sewage properly, but when we knew a sample was due to take place, then we'd start following best practices and use the chemicals so that our samples would pass.
The whistleblower told me that everything was focused on making sure these tests would pass.
And was this just at one sewage treatment works?
No, I saw it happen across the board. Everyone is incentivised to pass the sampling tests because it would lead to bonuses at the end of the year. We'd always find a way to make the samples pass. It didn't matter how we got there. If there was a way to save money and find loopholes, that's what we would do.
With the self-monitoring system seemingly open to cheating, critics believe the Environment Agency should be doing more.
If they find out there's a problem, they've got to do something about it. I have some sympathy with the agency because its budgets have been slashed. They've got far too much work to do. They haven't got the political support.
John Leyland is a director at the Environment Agency.
Do you think the system's open to abuse?
It's not my nature to assume that people will abuse a system. The system is there to work. Our job is just to make sure that it does.
It is the regulator's role to assume that people might try and cut corners, and you're there to catch them, though, isn't it?
The water companies must abide by our permits, which give them the legal means by which to operate their sewage treatment works, and where they don't, we'll take robust action.
We contacted Water UK, who represent water companies, and they told us the water industry is one of the most heavily regulated sectors in the UK. Policies and procedures are in place to provide assurance that wastewater sampling is appropriate and accurate. All water company staff are encouraged to report any issues anonymously. And when it comes to the regulator, there's a question mark over how much illegal dumping of sewage the Environment Agency knows about.
You see that brown and white foam emerging from there. When you try to ask questions about that, we'll always be told that's a natural occurring foam.
Ashley Smith is from the campaign group Windrush Against Sewage Pollution. The group has analysed detailed sewage data provided by water companies, data that the regulator doesn't routinely request.
Our investigation has shown that it looks like the Environment Agency are missing about 95% of illegal pollution incidents. It's nowhere near an effective regulator, and you can see that.
Ashley's campaign group checked the data for just 13 sewage works over 3 years to see if there were any illegal spills the Environment Agency might have missed. How many do you think they found? 5, 10, 15? They found at least 700 examples of illegal dumping of sewage that the Environment Agency knew nothing about. It must be alarming that you seem to be missing so much illegal activity, isn't it?
I don't think that we are missing such illegal activity.
You really don't think that?
We are a robust regulator, and where we find signs of illegal activity, we prosecute. I believe in the staff in the Environment Agency. I think they are doing the best with the resources that they can. But could we do more with more? Yes, we could.
As for the government, last week it voted down a proposal to place a legal duty on water companies to reduce the dumping of sewage. Following public outcry, they've now said they'll look at this again, but the details are still unknown. And what about the role of the other regulator, Ofwat?
Ofwat, which is the economic regulator that basically sets how high our water bills can rise, has always been too concerned to make sure that water bills are kept low. And that's meant the water companies can't invest in the sewage works. On the flip side of that, water companies need to be put under a bit of pressure not to pay such high dividends to their shareholders. So when they make a profit out of us, that money is reinvested into the sewage works.
Studies have shown that water companies have paid shareholders on average £2 billion a year since they were privatised 3 decades ago, as critics are quick to point out.
After all, the business is interested in money, and then we have to accept that. They're not interested in the environment.
I mean, it's quite a cynical picture you're painting. Do you have evidence for that?
The shareholder puts money in, they get as much money as they possibly can back, and they've done very, very well at that. The government has to use that to generate the actual protection and the service that people in this country deserve.
Ofwat told us they've backed investment of around £1 billion to water companies each year. And Water UK said they want to invest more, but need the government and Ofwat's backing at the next price review. Fairford is a small town in the Cotswolds, a desirable place to live. It's seen an influx of new property developments in recent years. And whilst the demand for housing increases, there isn't always the same level of demand for improvement when it comes to the water treatment works that serve residents.
Fairford's had major development over the last decade or so, and effectively looking at a population that's gone up by a quarter to a third, with relatively little other new infrastructure work going in at the same time.
So I really don't understand how you can have an area that is struggling with capacity for sewage, and yet new houses can be continually built.
The build, build, build mantra means that the whole system is skewed towards letting the development happen and maybe sorting out problems later.
Last year, Fairford Sewage Treatment Works dumped raw sewage into the local river for over 100 days continuously. It means Fairford is one of the worst spillers in the Thames water region.
There's a whole system built around the water companies and the pressures they're under from Ofwat to keep bills low, only to do X on investment. So we're avoiding infrastructure work that needs doing, and urgent environmental work, climate change work, all of that, to keep houses affordable.
Thames Water says they work with authorities and developers to ensure current infrastructure supports growth. They plan to spend £2 million to upgrade Fairford Sewage Treatment Works. Finally, we're heading back up the Thames to Port Meadow, where people are still enjoying a swim, which is surprising when you consider what the Environment Agency told me.
So should people be swimming in the rivers, or should they steer clear of them for now?
The rivers that we have are not there for human swimming. They're there for the wildlife and the fish that live within them. I think if we want to start talking about water that's fit for human health, then that is a good conversation to have. But that is a much bigger conversation.
So you're taking a risk? It's a personal risk if you decide to go in the rivers at the moment?
I don't swim in rivers, and I would just advise everybody to use the information and the data. I wouldn't advise anybody to take a risk.
If you want to find out how much raw sewage was dumped last year in your area, you can look on the Rivers Trust website. And if you decide you still want to take the plunge and the risk, here's some sensible advice.
If you wash your hands and your face with clean water after coming out before eating any food, and also make sure any open wounds are covered.
So while there are some things we can all be aware of, the message is clear. Our rivers and seas are in a sorry state, often down to the dumping, sometimes illegally, of raw sewage by water companies. And much will need to change alongside some serious investment if we want to see our rivers thriving once more.
And that's it for tonight's programme. If you want to continue the conversation, please join in using our hashtag ITV Tonight on Twitter, as well as visiting our Facebook and Instagram pages and our website, itv.com/tonight. Until next time, good evening and thanks for watching. Coming up on Tuesday, Laura Tobin looks at how we can save the planet and money.
The impact that could have on us tackling climate change and also getting affordable heat for people is just a staggering opportunity.